Afternoon, everybody. I'm Ruth. I am a Year 6 teacher in the UK, so I teach 10 and 11-year-olds primarily. I have taught down to 7-year-olds, and I have also worked with children up to the age of 16. So I have a fairly wide range of experience, I suppose, sort of. I'm here to talk to you this morning about effective questioning. So I'm going to talk about a few different things with this and hopefully give you some strategies that you can have a go at in your own schools. These are all zero resource ideas. It's mostly just about talking and thinking. And please feel free to ask any questions at the end. So, why do we use questions in our lessons? What's the point? So me personally, I use questioning to engage pupils, to get them thinking, to check on their understanding from previous lessons or from the lesson that's in progress, to get them to remember what's happened in a previous lesson, and to help them understand what's happened in a previous lesson as well, to focus them into the lesson and get them thinking about the new idea that we're talking about, and to help extend their thinking as well, not just asking closed questions with one single answer, but to get them to be analytical, to be evaluative of their own learning. And I do that through leading pupils through a sequence of planned questions, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit more detail. And to get them to practice and use higher order reasoning and thinking skills, so to get them to problem solve, to reason, to evaluate, and then to formulate their own questions as well. So there is an additional purpose, a higher purpose to question, and that's as a means of creating what I like to call a healthy learning tension. Basically, that sense of back and forth between a teacher and the pupils, a safe space where you can disagree with the teacher or yourself in a very respectful manner, or with the others, and get them to question what's going on in a lesson. So how do I do that? Or how do we as educators do that? And for me, something that's been very important throughout my teaching career so far is creating what I call an "it's okay" classroom. And this is a poster I have up in the room. It's a little bit cheesy, but I like it, which is "failure is just practice for success." So I do that by encouraging risk-taking. It's quite common, especially in UK schools, for students to feel safe and wait for a teacher to sort of give them suggestions, rather than to put their own suggestions out there, which might be wrong. That can be a very daunting thing, to put your hand up and to suggest something which other members of the class or your teacher may disagree with. But if you train students of any age, right from 4 right through to 16, 17, 18, to disagree with each other and to disagree with what you're saying as well, and have their own opinions without put downs, without someone telling them that that's not okay, then that will create an environment where they can share what they think in a safe space and get that educational debate going on various subjects. So these are some of the strategies that I tend to use if a pupil has got something wrong when we're having a discussion. And it's mostly about how you speak to a student, and then what you can do to sort of help them get to a right answer or along the right lines. So something I might say is, "Oh, so close, have another think," and give them some time to formulate their answer again or to rethink it. Or I might say something like, "Great effort, not quite. What could you use to help you?" So get them then to have a think about what they've got in the classroom to help them. That might be practical materials. It may be a picture or some reading that you've given them to look at. and then give them time to go back and look at those materials to see if they can get themselves towards a right answer. Now, I'm doing right because I tend to think of the way I question is that there's never one right answer. I try and make them very open. Obviously, some knowledge questions do have a single right answer, but it's the way that you question children to get them to think and to get to the right lines of a topic. Something else I tend to do is say, can anybody help George? And then ask for other children to put their hands up or offer suggestions to help that student. Give them talk time, and giving them talk time is something that I find very, very powerful. It's about sharing a brain, so not just using what a pupil has got in their own brain, but being able to talk to a partner or a small group and share their knowledge. And especially for your weaker pupils, that helps them to formulate an answer of their own. It might have initially come from a friend, but once they have time to think about it, they get to their own version of an answer. Or I might offer verbal or visual help with that pupil while they are answering a question. So I've given a very simple example of 2 plus 2, and I may just hold up 2 and 2 and then get them to count with me, just to offer them that verbal stimulus to help them get there if they're taking a little while. And that can be done in other ways with much older pupils, so to give them a little hint verbally, or to point back or refer back to a picture or a piece of text and help guide them towards a correct answer. And finally, if I find that I've asked a question that a lot of children are struggling with, we use something in our school called a simmering pot, hence the picture of a cauldron, and we'll put something in the simmering pot to come back to either tomorrow or later in the day. And I'll say, let's put a pin in that, or let's put that in the simmering pot. And then I'll have a think about a way to reteach it, or a different way of ordering my questions, so that we can come back and have a further look. And something that I tend to do is use incorrect answers that pupils have given to encourage discussion as a class. So rather than dismissing an incorrect answer and just saying, oh, thank you, or, no, sorry, I'll tend to say, that's interesting, or let's talk about that. So for example, in a science lesson, if we're talking about how the moon and the sun and the earth move, a child may have the misconception that the sun moves across the sky. You can then use that misconception to look at what really happens and talk about, well, why doesn't that happen? Why is that wrong? So it's very gently letting the student know that they're not right, but saying that that's okay, and now we're going to look at what's really correct. That tends to lead to improving on misconceived reasoning, and it also helps you foster that atmosphere in which it's okay to be wrong. Another way I tend to do this is in maths, and I use these types of questions a lot when I teach maths, is spotting and explaining mistakes. So I've got 2 examples here. One is about turning improper fractions into mixed fractions and vice versa. So getting them to look at those and explaining which one is incorrect or which ones are, what's gone wrong, and can they correct them. And something that my students really enjoy is when I write Miss Kemp's maths on the top of the paper and make them think it's really my working out. It's not, but they love that, to try and prove to me that I am wrong. It just creates that fun atmosphere with the younger pupils, and they love to tell me what I should have done correctly, thus improving their reasoning and their problem-solving skills. Same with the Rosie problem. So sometimes I may give them an incorrectly worked out answer and get them to solve it themselves and explain what it is that Rosie went wrong. Again, looking at their reasoning skills. So another thing that's great about effective questioning is it stops that pupil switching off, daydreaming, staring out the window. So something my school is very big on at the moment is having a hands down policy. So instead of asking pupils to put their hands up and answer questions, we use different methods to make sure all the children are thinking all the time, so that we can choose any child in the class and they will have an answer to whatever question you have asked. And ways we do this are using lollipop sticks with their names on them, giving the children talk time first, so they have a time to ask a question, answer a question in pairs or in small groups, and then pulling out lolly sticks and saying, Josh, what do you think to that question? Jimmy, what do you think? A different strategy is to use little balls or counters and putting seating positions or names on those and pull those out, or giving every child a playing card and having a playing card pack of your own at the front where you can pull out one and it will match to a pupil in the card. Again, just getting them on the ball and being engaged and ready to answer a question at all times, because they don't know if their name or their playing card or their lottery ball is going to be chosen. What I would say is if you use any of these strategies, they must have that partnered talk time first, so they have time to think about the question, to formulate an answer, because there's nothing worse than putting a child on the spot where they don't know, and that doesn't help with creating that it's okay to be wrong. Whereas if they've had time to talk and they say something that's incorrect, you can just keep on moving and that's interesting. Let's continue talking about that. Okay, something else I do to make sure that students don't switch off in class is waiting time. Now, something interesting I found from some research is that teachers generally, when they ask a student questions, give less than a second for a student to answer. Now, the problem with that is if that quick time is always used, some students just won't bother even trying to answer because they know they don't know. Whereas if you give students, say, 3 or 4 or 5 seconds before you expect an answer from them, and this will feel like an eternity of time to wait, but it's worth it. It will encourage them to give extended answers. It will encourage them to give an answer at all. And you're less likely to get that I don't know. And you're more likely to get more thoughtful responses as a child with 3, 4, or 5 seconds of wait time has had that time to think and formulate what they are going to say before saying it. This will also really, really help your less able pupils, as the more time you give them within reason, the longer they have to think and the longer they have to formulate. Obviously, giving them too much time will slow the pace of your lesson. So it's that balance between more than a second and less than 5 to 8 at the absolute maximum. So something else with questioning is looking at open questions versus closed questions. Now, closed questions can be really, really useful if you are wanting to just get a basic understanding of the children's or pupils' knowledge. However, they don't necessarily get them to think, and they don't encourage longer answers or talking time, whereas open questions are much more likely to do this. So, for example, I don't know whether any of you have ever asked a question, what did you do last night after school? Or did you go out last night? Or how are you? Most pupils will say, I'm good, or yes, or no. Whereas if you say, how are you this morning? Or what did you do yesterday after school? Pupils can't say yes or no or I'm good. They have to give you that longer answer, that, oh, I went to the shops with my mum, or whatever it was that they did, immediately starting a conversation and allowing you to ask more questions as a follow-up. And that can be used in lessons as well, not just as a conversation starter. And something I use to try and open up my questions is this might idea. So instead of asking questions like, what is the meaning of democracy? You insert might into a question to turn that around and show students that there's more than one possible answer. So saying what is the meaning of democracy sounds like there is just one answer available, whereas saying what might the meaning of democracy be suggests that there's 2, 3, 4, 7 different possibilities of a correct answer, which will allow students to, first of all, feel like it's okay to give a suggestion because there's more than one correct answer, and that will help you foster that it's okay atmosphere. And it will also encourage them to think more deeply, as they might have one answer that they think it is, but then other students may also have correct answers, which will get them to question their own thinking. And then finally, before I give some strategies, something I do is I get the children to ask the questions as well. So getting students to ask their own questions to you allows them to think more deeply and allows you to find out what they want to know about a piece of work or about a subject that you are working on. So it could be that they ask questions to their peers. It could be that they ask questions to a whole class. This will help you not only to see what the students want to know, it will help you to assess their learning, and it will engage the pupils because it shows them that you want to know what they want to learn. It's not just all coming from the teacher at the front. So you could give them a visual stimulus. So for example, if I gave them a picture like this, you'd say, what do you want to know about this picture? Or why do the children look so sad? Again, starting to engage them into deeper thinking. What's going on behind the picture? Why are they there? How have they got here? Why are they in a car? What's going to happen next? Loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of questions. You could get your students to write down questions. So for example, if you are working on a new topic, you could get students to write down questions they would like to know. This will help you assess what they know already, but also demonstrate misconceptions that they might have. And also it will help the students to lead the learning a little bit, because then you can focus your planning and your lessons around questions that the students have. Or you could use a question box or a plenary, an end of lesson task, where they come up with questions and that forms the basis of your next lesson. Something I love doing in my classroom, and my children have got very good at this year, is giving them this is the answer, what could the question be, or what is the question? So you could use this in a variety of subjects. You could give them a number in maths, a word, a phrase, a piece of vocabulary, and get them then to formulate questions. So for example, 56 is the answer. What is the question? It could be 7 times 8, 57 minus 1. You could get them to use all 4 operations, BODMAS, BIDMAS, whatever you call it, to really open that up and get a discussion going. Or in science, the heart is the answer. What is the question? What is the center of the respiratory system, the circulatory system, etc. So opening up that discussion. And finally, some common problems with questioning and some strategies that you may want to try in your own classrooms. So some pitfalls that I have learned from experience with questioning is asking too many things at once, or rephrasing a question over and over again in the same sentence. I find that ask one question and use direct, concrete language with as few words as possible, and then stop. I have been guilty in the past of asking a question and then rephrasing it and then rephrasing it again, thus confusing students. Building up to difficult questions. So this is where your plan of questions needs to be very solid. Start off with basic closed questions to find out what the students know, and then build up to your why does that happen? How does that happen later on? And making sure that your questions are relevant and get you to the center of an issue. So think about what you want your questions to do to a lesson. Is it to find out their knowledge, their understanding, or are you asking it just for the sake of asking it? And I think I've pretty much just covered what I said there on this slide. But asking too many closed questions is another thing that I found doesn't work. If you ask too many closed questions, you won't get students talking. In fact, you'll close a lesson down because you'll just get yes, no's, George Washington, simple, basic answers. You won't get the talk and the discussion that you need. And then finally, to try and open up answers, I try and sometimes say things like, I would like an answer in no more than 15 words. Or you must answer this question in a full sentence. And again, that just gets them thinking and talking and making sure that they are also building their speaking and language skills. So some fun strategies that you may want to use for questioning. So the first one is tell your neighbour. So after asking a question, getting students to tell their neighbour what they think, to articulate their thoughts, giving them time to do it. Bouncing is a great strategy that I use. So once I've asked a question and I've had some responses from around the classroom, I might say, oh, Josh, what do you think about that? Or who agrees with Jimmy? Why do you agree with them? Who disagrees? Why? And again, it opens up that discussion and gets the focus off you and onto the students. And again, you can bounce that around the room. Jimmy, what do you think of Sandra's answer? Sandra, can you develop Carl's answer with more detail? Carl, could you put all those answers together? Just again, getting them talking. I'm going to skip over that one. And then finally, something I like to use quite a lot is thunks to get children thinking. And these are simple looking questions which stop you in your tracks and get you looking at the world in a new light. For example, what's more important, being right or being nice? Does sound exist? And these are great for the start of a day or the start of a social lesson. To get children thinking about the world around them and other things. So, thank you very much for listening. What would you like to ask me?
Thank you so much, Ruth, for that. One of the things I really like is the bounce idea as well, and I completely agree on the teachers asking questions and expecting responses immediately without giving any moment for the child to think. Because if you do that with an adult, you ask a question and you expect a response, there's no thinking time. So I think it's crucial that we give our students that bit of time to think as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't have any questions, but thank you so much for that. We'll move on to Mickey next. Where are you, Mickey? Let me find you. There you are. I'll unmute you. Hold on a second, you're muted. Be unmute. There you go. You are unmuted.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.